Hi everyone, this is Phil Travis, and welcome to World History, the first edition, so until 1500, more or less. Each week in this class, I'm going to do a recorded presentation, and the presentation is not going to deal with every single aspect of our lesson for the week, but it will deal with certain critical components of the lesson for the week. This week's lesson, our first one, discusses early human origins and the development of human civilization, which is extremely important for the modern world, the development of permanent human communities and human civilizations, which transformed the way people have interacted with their environment and transformed the way people interact with each other as a society as well. So each week I'll have one of these presentations, and information on these presentations is game for tests also. So you should remember that and watch these, and I'll try to keep them at a workable length. So the first thing we need to think about on the first, being the first lesson, is what is history? On one level, history, of course, involves the study of the human past. And historians, more or less, are most interested with written sources. So a historian will examine documents, books, primary source documents, secondary source documents. Of course, a primary source document is a document that comes, it was a first-hand account from the time. Secondary source is one that is written through an interpretation by a historian or other individual. It's a secondary source. It's a second-hand account. Generally, historians deal with written sources, though by no means is that like a hard and fast rule. Historians also use imagery, photos, film, oral history, and so forth in the writing of history. And historians are also a very interdisciplinary field, or history is a very interdisciplinary field. So when you look at the study of prehistory, when we talk about prehistory, we're talking about the time before written languages, before written sources. So if historians use written sources as their primary form of analysis of the past, then what makes the historical study of the prehistory, or of the period before written records, possible? And that would be largely, if you think for a second, archaeology and anthropology. History is an interdisciplinary field, meaning that historians always draw from different forms of scholarly inquiry. Historians, depending on your subject, may use political science in their work. They might use sociology in their work. There are literally numerous different types of analysis that historians use to construct a narrative of the past. And we're going to first look at the history of humans prior to civilization, prior to written evidence, prior to written languages. And to do this, historians have to rely on archaeology and anthropology. Anthropology is basically the study of human civilizations. Anthropologists examine how humans live. And many anthropologists in the modern age will go and live with indigenous peoples, for example, to gain a look into earlier forms of human societies. Archaeologists, of course, examine artifacts, the remains of human societies. And the findings of archaeologists and anthropologists are all very fundamental in allowing historians to write books. And of course, anthropologists and archaeologists write books about these topics too, but it allows historians to incorporate these findings into the study of history to create a more encompassing narrative of the human past. David Christensen wrote a very famous historical work I guess it was about a decade ago that it came out, and it actually became a program on the History Channel. It was called Big History. And David Christensen incorporated numerous different types of field of study to construct a historical narrative of the past that stretched back, actually in Big History, all the way back to the scientific theory of the Big Bang and the origin of the universe. And so historians incorporate numerous different types of evidence and different types of scientific inquiry into piecing together the long origins of human existence and evolution on Earth. I'm going to go ahead and put these up for you. Scientists and historians believe that the earliest human origins are about 3.5 million years ago. This is the result of the discovery of remains in Africa, particularly in areas of East Africa, around Ethiopia and Tanzania. And much of these theories come from the discovery of Lucy, who is the skeleton pictured here, discovered by Richard Leakey in 1974. Lucy is believed to be one of a group of hominids, early human ancestors, known as the Australopithecines. And with Lucy's remains, we've found evidence of basic tool development. Over time, we see the development of human migrations, the usage of fire. You find evidence for the usage of fire with, for example, with evidence of carbon remains with human remains, more specialized tools, axes, these types of things. And actually, you might be interested to know that these types of discoveries continue to this day. And actually, in 2015, there was a major discovery made in South Africa in which scientists unearthed remains in a cave deep in South Africa of early human ancestors that are believed to be a unique branch of the human family. Homo sapiens, which is basically us, believed to emerge from about 60,000 to 15,000 years ago. And what makes humans, as we know, the Homo sapiens sapien, us, unique, are the capacity, the cranial capacity, our brain capacity for conscious and reflective thought, meaning that people have the ability to contemplate their place in the world. Humans have an ability to adapt and learn to their situation by reflecting effectively on their situation in the universe. And it is the human that is the only individual that's capable to, if you will, perplex over their existential state in existence. We see increasing migration of Homo sapiens during this time period. We see the advanced development of languages, though not written languages, spoken languages during this time period. And of course, also critical to human development was not only conscious thought, but also the development of the opposable thumb, and of course, bipedal upright movement, which are all characteristic of human evolution. So these are all very significant components of what historians might call big history, the long history of human evolution before civilization, before written languages, that other forms of scientific inquiry have allowed historians to incorporate into the long narrative of human history. We break the long history of human development into two big chunks: the Paleolithic Age, which refers to the early Stone Age, and then the New Stone Age, or the Neolithic Age, which is really the period that we're living in now, the period after the development of civilization. So the early Stone Age is generally a period that occurs before the advent of agriculture, and it's a period in which humans migrated throughout the world. And their migrations were generally for the purposes of sustenance, hunting, foraging and so forth, drove people to migrate throughout the world. And of course, you'll notice on this map that North America and South America are among the last places that humans actually inhabited. And the inhabiting of North America and South America is believed to have occurred largely through passage across the land bridge, the Beringia land bridge at the Bering Strait, up there between Siberia or northern Asia and Alaska. The Bering Strait land bridge was an area simply during the last ice age in which sea levels were lower because of the ice age, and as a result, low-lying parts of the sea were exposed, and this allowed people to migrate across these areas in pursuit of game. And in the case of archaic Native Americans, we'd be talking about mammoths and so forth that they would have hunted with large spears for their basic sustenance. Life for people in the Paleolithic period was very different. Paleolithic people before civilization, people do not live in cities. They do not live in permanent communities in the way they do in the Neolithic Age. People live hunter-gatherer lifestyles. They move about along with their game. This drove people to inhabit the Americas, for example. And of course, the inhabiting of the Americas is not simply across the land bridge. We also theorize that there were individuals that probably came to the Americas by sailing canoe. And so there's other theories about these, and these are theories. The pre-civilization human societies had very different social structures. Because people don't live in permanent positions, you have greater equality. There's no sort of hoarding of wealth and land and power. Instead, there's greater equality. Everybody has an integral social role. There's less divergence, if you will, between gender in society. There's really no, in the modern sense, idea of wealth and poverty. Though there are obviously leaders, and there are people there are certainly, there are basic hierarchical structures. You have a chieftain, a leader, and you have people who have various roles within the society and within early religion. But you find much less in the way of what we would think of as wealth inequality. Early Paleolithic people rely on nature's fluctuation. They move for food. They live a very subsistence-based life. People are not thinking about writing books, for example. People are not thinking about building bridges. They're thinking about surviving, and they move about for the purpose of this. They are highly subject to famine and other natural impediments, and of course, Neolithic societies remain vulnerable to these types of problems too, but agriculture and civilization allows humans to largely, I guess, to have greater flexibility to the fluctuations of nature and to harness and control nature. And a result of that is a huge growth in human population in the world today. The Neolithic Age generally refers to the age of the New Stone Age, and the roots of the New Stone Age are connected to the development of modern humans. And this came along first with Neanderthal man, or the caveman, which goes back about 100,000 years ago, and then, of course, Cro-Magnon man. The Neanderthal man, which the primary ruins of Neanderthal man were discovered in caves in France and in the Middle East, though the most numerous, in terms of data, the most numerous findings are actually in places like Croatia, located in southeastern Europe. Neanderthal peoples are associated with the early origins of human religion. And the artifacts that you see here, for example, the Venus figurine in the lower right of your picture, is an example. Many historians and archaeologists believe is an example of early religion, as this is a female figure and her fertile areas are very exaggerated, if you will. And we believe there's many of these small statuettes found, and they're believed to be identifiers of the origins of early religion and a focus on fertility within Neanderthal culture. Of course, you have the famous cave painting here above, and these types of cave paintings were often located in very deep recesses of Neanderthal cave complexes, and we believe that these types of cave paintings were used in rituals to bless the hunt, for example. And so we find these types of evidence to be indicative of development of early human religion. Now, Cro-Magnon man came along around 40,000 years ago, and Cro-Magnon man, Homo sapiens, is basically the modern humans, and they are associated with intellect and conscious thought. Neanderthals and Cro-Magnons lived together, and we know that they would have interacted with each other. And in fact, it's known that many humans have small percentage of Neanderthal DNA in them to this day, which is evidence of the interaction and the living together between Neanderthals and Cro-Magnons during the late Paleolithic period. So the Neolithic Age is the age associated with the move to civilization, and we're going to define what civilization is momentarily. This is something that happened about 12 to 6,000 years ago, where increasingly you see humans organizing themselves into permanent agricultural communities. Now, it's important to note that the move to civilization is not something that happened sort of in an even break. It's not as though every human said, okay, around about 6,000 years ago, we're all developing agricultural communities. Instead, this is a gray area. Some areas of the world develop into agricultural civilizations. Others continue to live in sort of a way that is more reminiscent of the Paleolithic Age for years and years and years. So this is something that is a long-term change that happens in different places at different times. But the move to civilization really embodies the basic change towards the development on a basic level of modern society, of permanent communities, of modern agriculture, allowing people to effectively live in cities, in permanent communities, and to develop the things associated with modern societies, the arts, philosophy, history, modern advanced religion, government, are all products of the move to permanent agricultural civilization. On a basic level, what do you need for civilization? You need agriculture. And for agriculture, you need water. So most of your early civilizations are located near rivers. And of course, that remains true, except, of course, over time, humans develop irrigation. And humans use irrigation from a very, very early stage of civilization to expand and grow their communities. And of course, today, irrigation is its most advanced developed form ever, which allows people, for example, to grow crops in arid parts of the American West. Just as an example, domesticated animals is oftentimes a characteristic of agriculture, but it's not universal. Ancient Egypt, which is one of the civilizations we will look at, is a civilization in which you have an example of a people that built their civilization without any beast of burden. The Great Pyramids of Egypt were built without any large animals, without any beasts of burden, without horses, without ox, that kind of thing. What are the characteristics of civilization? And I should point out that civilization is a very loaded term, and a lot of historians don't like this term because of the connotation that people who aren't living like this are somehow uncivilized. And that's not what we mean when we're using this term. Instead, we're using this term to refer to a basic break towards humans living in permanent settlements to humans who are living more of a Paleolithic or hunter-gatherer style lifestyle. General characteristics are the development of written languages, though again, these are not hard and fast rules. There are many great civilizations that had no written languages. The one that comes to mind immediately would be the Inca. The Inca in South America, Peru, right? The great site of Machu Picchu in Cusco. The Inca had no written language, but yet they are obviously a highly developed human civilization. The development of elaborate political structures and governing structures. The development of cities in permanent living areas. Development of tools and technologies, of science, of philosophy, ultimately, of religion, of the arts. These are all characteristics of civilization. Effectively, people are able to break free from a subsistence lifestyle and are effectively able to grant to society greater time to other types of human pursuits, if that makes sense. So the change to agriculture had huge ramifications for the way people lived. Social structure changes. You have the development of the concept of wealth. People control land. You have an increase in hierarchy. You have groups that are able to consolidate huge amounts of personal wealth, control of lands, and through this you have an increase in the gap between those who are most powerful and most wealthy and those who are in poverty. And so human society, social structure in the post-agricultural period results in a lot of senses in the problem of poverty in a lot of senses, as some in society are able to maximize their wealth and their power to tremendous extents, while others are left in rather destitute poverty. So the increasing hierarchical structure of society, the development of patriarchy, the agricultural transition results in societies that increasingly develop around male-dominated society, and in many cases civilization results in females being subjugated. No, this is not a universal characteristic, and there are examples of ancient societies that are matriarchal rather than patriarchal. But the early civilizations that we will look at are all examples of patriarchal societies in which they are increasingly male-dominated and increasingly women are subjugated in these societies. And this is a change and a transition that human societies are only now beginning to change in the 21st century. You have an increasing specialization of tasks, the development of specialized labor, of metallurgy, of advanced astronomy, of science, of mathematics, philosophy, art. All of these are all components, eventually history, are all components of civilization, of the specialization in human tasks that results from the human transition to agriculture and human civilization. Agriculture also means greater control over the environment, and so lifespan increases, world population grows, and over time you will of course see that with the industrialization of agriculture in the last several hundred years, world populations have grown to unprecedented levels. But this is all connected in history to the advent of human civilization, which allowed humans to harness nature, to store food, to use their environment, to expand lifespan, and to grow world populations. People effectively, because they're in a stable place and because they don't have to focus daily on subsistence as much, humans are able to effectively refine the structure of society. And so we see negatives, we see an increase in wealth hierarchies, we see the development of often repressive patriarchal societies, but you also see a specialization of advanced tasks in society, and you see people generally living longer and the population of the world growing. There's three early agricultural sites, agricultural communities. The first that we might mention is Jericho. Jericho is located in the Near East, around the areas of modern Palestine and Israel. There is also Shetal Hayuk, which is located in modern Turkey. In both cases in these sites, this is Shetal Hayuk. The last one was Jericho. We see the development of advanced metallurgy. So metallurgy, the working of metals. And generally, early metallurgy in some places first focused on the usage of copper exclusively, and then eventually to the usage of bronze. And in some places went straight to bronze. Other places used copper first. Bronze is tin and copper combined, smelted together. Metallurgy is incredibly significant to changes in agricultural communities, as bronze, for example, refines tool making. Bronze also is fundamentally a factor in military technologies. And over time, you'll see that the move to iron, the usage of iron technology, would be an absolutely critical development in the development of human war-making capacity. You also see early agricultural communities in Japan, going back to around about 11,000 BCE. This is an example of pottery from the Jomon period of central Japan. In this class, we're going to consider three general areas in the birthplace of human civilizations. In China, the Yellow River and the Yangtze River. In the Near East, the area known as the Fertile Crescent, if you will, we will see the development of the first human civilizations in Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and also in Egypt, the so-called Gift of the Nile. And the other human civilization we will be examining briefly is the Indus River civilization, located in the area of Punjab, which is in modern-day Pakistan, in India. And this region is home of the Dravidian peoples, also sometimes known as Harappan society, pre-Hindu society. So these are the three general regions that we're going to consider in our exploration of human civilizations.